G'day guys, today it's all about a few different variations of effective hamstring stretching. Let's have a look and see how it's done. Okay, so here's a self-assessment you can do on the top end range of motion of your hamstring. It's called a wader's bow test. The knees are soft, not locked, not bent. You start at in a standing position, you get your shoulder blades together and you bow forward into a good morning, holding your shoulders tight and your lumbar curve in a neutral position. You come forward until you feel the stretch in the top end of the hamstring, and just before you start to lose your lumbar curve, that is your hamstring range of motion at the hip end, and it's in isolation to the lower back. So the sit and reach test or the slump forward to see if you can touch the toes, for me it's not really showing you much about the hamstring length because it's disregarding what's happening at the lower back and the length of those muscles. To get into a good deadlift position, you need about 50 or 60 degrees while being able to maintain your lumbar curve and your upper back tightness, and that's exactly the goal of this exercise. For me, stretching, I've said it before, is always just about improving movement function in the gym. So we need to really respect the movement that we're using in the gym and keeping that lumbar curve when we are stretching the hamstring so it has functional carryover to things like deadlift and deep squatting. Okay, so once we've assessed and we know we've got some work to do, we can all agree, I think hamstring stretching is not really that much fun, but this position is probably my most user-friendly. Really good for stretching out that top end of the hamstring and improving that wader's bow assessment, which will have carryover into, like I said, the bigger movements in the gym. So the torso is staying up and I'm just driving my heel into the floor, and that's rocking my torso forward and into the stretch. With this one, I always assess one side to the other. It's very common for hamstrings to have different lengths. Keep your torso up, the chest high, the shoulder blades together, and don't lose that lumbar curve. And with some really long stretching, hamstrings love long stretching. So away from the session, you might hold this for 5+ minutes once you sort of get to that end range that you've achieved. So then we move over to stretching the bottom end of the hamstring so it attaches onto the knee. So with this one, I've got the dowel rod under my lower back. This is really important because often people will do this stretch and their lumbar spine will just go into flexion when they're doing it. So they're really just pulling the hamstring through the lower back and not really getting any isolation hamstring stretching. A lot of people don't get anywhere with a lot of hamstring stretching. It's just usually comes down to the finer details of how you're doing it. So the dowel rod is there to force me to maintain my lumbar curve, and then I've positioned myself far enough away from the wall that I can almost get my knee to a straight or a locked out position, but not quite, and feel a really good stretch. As soon as I feel like my knee is going into a locked position, I'm too far away from the wall, and I'll bring my hip in a little bit closer and just wiggle forward a little bit to have that improvement in the stretch on the go. So we want to ideally get that position so that the leg is 90 degrees, the knee's slightly unlocked, and there's just a really mild stretch there, if none at all, and you're sort of really getting close to what would be considered a really good amount of range of motion for good carryover into the gym. Make sure that left leg that's not working is nice and relaxed and the pelvis stays level from side to side with that one. Very important. So here we go over into a downward dog, and if you're doing it right and well, you can really stretch both ends of the hamstring with this one. If you can get your butt up in the air enough with good thoracic extension and lumbar curve, you're getting a pull through the hamstring at the hip end. And then obviously, where most people feel the downward dog is definitely at the bottom end, through the calves. So this can take some work to get to. You can start with your hands elevated, which should help to get you in a better position. So here I am, just kind of not forcing it, but just pushing my chest towards my feet, just trying to get that thoracic extended and that bum right up in the air, and just try and hold that lumbar curve as best I can. I started with single leg, just left, right, left, right, left, right. So this just allows me just to kind of wiggle myself into position. It can take some time. It's very nervy, these stretches through the hamstring, especially this one. So I usually do 3 or 4 sets of like 30-second holds first, and then I'll sort of feel like I'm in a much better position where I'll go into a long hold, and I might hold it for 3 or 4 minutes. Alright guys, I hope that all helps. Let us know how you go with it. Cheers.